All right, we're back. The AllStar MMA live show. We're here to recap and react to all the action from UFC 286 that went down in London over the weekend. We got our special guest, James from Lucrative MMA Betting. This man has built an extreme reputation online with his knowledge of the game, and that's what we're here for. We're here to hear what he has to say, and of course, we have my co-host Jspec in Vegas. First, James, just tell us about your bets over the weekend, man, before we get into reacting to the fights.
Well, you actually have got me on the worst weekend of the whole of 2023. So it's kind of annoying we couldn't do this last weekend or next weekend. But this was actually my first real loss of the year. So I had lots of bets that didn't go my way. One of the ones that I want to bring up, because you can probably help me feel a little bit better about this, was the Gabriel Santos fight. I bet on Gabriel Santos as a decent size underdog, plus 145. And I think we're going to get into it in this show, since this is a recap show. And there's only one main talking point for this weekend, in my opinion, which is the judging, right? Because it was horrendous. We'll get into that. But obviously, I lost because of the judging, in my opinion. I felt like Gabriel Santos won that fight, but it was a close fight, so I'm not going to cry too bad. That was a bad loss. I also had Dusko Todorovic, the fight to go over 1.5 rounds. And obviously, he had this random knee injury where his knee blew out. So I lost on that as well. So it was just one of those weeks where everything goes wrong. I bet on Leon Edwards, but I bet him to finish the fight, not to win via decision. So I lost on that as well. So I took the right guy and I still lost. So it was one of those weeks where we didn't win, but that's how it is in gambling. You know, you win some, you lose some, but you continually go up. You know, it's like a hill. Sometimes you go down, but it's always trending up. So I've had a really good year so far, you know, so we was due a loss, but we're going to get it back next week.
Yeah, it's important to own up to bad weeks as well. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of guys in betting, you only see them post their winnings online, right? That's all you see them do. And it's great that, you know, you come out and you're truthful about it. And that the judging, yes, we're going to get into that shit. Like the horrendous judging, even though I have like connections to fighters and I talk to fighters, interview fighters all the time, but still the truth is the truth, right? Like you cannot deny it. I can't just like take sides. I can't be too biased about things. We go from top to bottom. Let's just jump into the main event. Leon Edwards, he gets the unanimous decision over Kamaru Usman. A lot of people are saying Usman's on the decline. His injuries are catching up to him. He just doesn't look the same. He's shell-shocked from the head kick knockout. Leon Edwards, he's in his prime. It's just like perfect timing for him. Lucrative, what do you see? What did you see in this fight? Like, are you leaning towards more of Leon being just overall better fighter and the game planning is better for him, or do you see a decline in Kamaru Usman?
I think there's undoubtedly a decline. You know, I have to say that off the bat. I don't want to take anything from Leon Edwards, but exactly like you said, we have to call it as we see it. I think you could definitely see a decline from Kamaru Usman there, but there's a lot of different things that are factored into that. So I don't know if you guys heard it, but it was going around, you know, in the fight circles that Kamaru Usman was heading into that fight with a pretty significant injury. You know, I heard his knees were, it's public knowledge that his knees are not maybe what they used to be when he was in his prime, you know, 32, 33. But I heard that it was actually even worse in this camp. And I heard that he had a cast on his hand for some of the camp. So he had a big hand injury. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I think that probably played a part if there is. And then you also have to think that the last fight was in altitude, right? And that's where Kamaru Usman trains. This fight wasn't an altitude. It was sea level. It was in London. It's where Edwards is from, you know, his home country of the UK. Also, it's been like 6-7 months from the last fight. He's coming off a big KO loss. You know, I think all of these things mixed into the pot made it so that Edwards could win that fight. You know, I do think that Edwards is in his prime. Now he's 31 years old. Kamaru Usman's going to be 36 in May. You know, so 36 and 31, there's a big difference. You know, I always say that for a male MMA fighter, their prime is 28 to 32. That's what I've seen over the years, right? And just athletic performance in general. 28 to 32 is where you have a good mix of, you know, your intangibles like your muscle mass, your strength, your testosterone, but then you also have the veteran side of things. You've been in the sport for a while. You're not young in the game, 21. You don't make the mistake. So 28 to 32 is the perfect age. That's where Leon is sitting right now. And Kamaru Usman, as I said, 36-year-old at welterweight. You're getting a little bit, he's 36 in May, I should say. You're getting a little bit older. So I think everything mixed into the pot. I do think Kamaru Usman's declined, but I think undoubtedly Edwards is in his prime now. He's getting better. And somebody said, I think it may have been someone who was interviewing Dana White or something, but they brought up a quote or a tweet that Teddy Adler's put out, the famous boxing coach who speaks about MMA a lot. He said that when a champion wins a title, they become 30% better overnight. And we see that quite often, right? Where a champion will win a title and they just look better. They've come into their own. They have that confidence now. And I think that's what happened to Edwards. So I don't want to take anything from Edwards. I do think there was decline on the Usman side, but I think Edwards has got a lot better since the last fight and over the last few years for sure.
Make sure you guys go in the descriptions and download the AllStar app to make picks on every UFC fight, win prizes, play against us. We have a show on Thursday nights. Come join us on that show. And I agree with you on a lot of those points, man. And I think Usman maybe rushed back into this too fast. It's almost like sometimes you shouldn't want the immediate rematch, but he probably felt like the UFC doesn't really like me that much. So I might have to just take this, because if I don't, I might have to fight somebody else. And if I lose, then I probably will never get another shot at the title. So, you rush into it. There's a lot of intangibles, but Usman, clearly he is not the same. He's not, man. And I'm just shocked by that, to be honest with you. I'm just shocked that the wrestling didn't work, but the injuries to the knees, and whatever else he was coming into this fight with, like maybe that hand injury or the whatever, he just couldn't grab the what is it? The gable grips, that you need for the wrestling against the cage to take the guy down. It just wasn't as good. But there was other talking points as well, that there was a lot of fouls in this fight. So let's go over some of these. 3 glove grabs by Leon Edwards, 1 glove grab by Kamaru Usman, 5 low blows from Edwards, 2 of which the referee called, 2 eye pokes from Leon Edwards not called, and 2 fence grabs from Leon Edwards. And which one was one of them was a point deduction, and one of them was like clearly a blatant fence grab that he should have been taken down. Jspec, what do you think about all these fouls and the impact it has on the fight?
I mean, it's horrendous. It's massive. It is outrageous. I don't know. I'm running out of words. It is a car crash, basically. It's shit, because it drastically changed the flow and outcome of the fight. I mean, we're 3 men in this room, and I know the men around the world. Dude, you get hit downstairs once, it's affecting your performance, let alone what you said 5 times. I know there was ones that didn't get called. The fence grab was almost a big FU to the rules and modern day MMA. I haven't seen fence usage like that since single digits UFC. The glove grabbing, that's kind of something that spilled over from the second one, right? Like there was a lot of glove grabbing that happened in the second fight. So ugly, unfortunate. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't like it at all, actually. I know fans don't appreciate it. During the fight, people were already saying like, "Oh, this is going to be the narrative. Edwards cheated to keep the belt." On the other side, though, I want to point out some stuff. People are going to hop on Kamaru, maybe declining. Probably is. He's at that age where it's normal for it to start to happen. Getting knocked out by somebody, especially at the highest level when you're not losing very much, is a big blow to your psyche. It changes the way you think while you're trying to get in there and do the thing. And he got knocked out cold and immediately had to face the same guy who did it. There's a lot of, I use the word gun shy. He has to get over that situation. I also want to credit Mr. Edwards. He was using, in jiu-jitsu, you always think of the baseball grip to keep somebody that's on your back off from choking you. He was using 2-on-1 right up front, stopping any kind of body lock, stopping any kind of double leg against, just straight neutralizing that attack. So as much as I want to go and say maybe Kamaru -1 or -0.5 on his attribute rating, I want to give Edwards you know, a +2 on takedown defense and awareness. So those fouls, man, ugly. But what are we gonna do about it?
Look, James Edwards, even though he did get taken down, the dude got back up every single time. Like he didn't get stuck there, and going back to the fouls, you know, I mean, the fence grabs. Like to me, there's no accidental fence grabs. There's no such thing. Like you've grabbed the fence, you grab the fence, you get a point taken away. And I was talking to another guy in a previous show about this and what should they do? Should they start the fight back, you know, in the center of the cage? And he said they should start the fight with the guy that grabbed the fence with his back against the fence, sitting down, and the guy that took him down, you know, on top of him, and start from there. What do you think of that?
It's tough, isn't it? Because if the ref takes a point, then there's an argument that that fence grab has already been dealt with. You know, we don't need to go back to the cage or anything. But when I'm thinking it in my head right now, even if you do take a point, right? If you don't put them back in the same position or in some form of clinch or ground control or in the takedown position where you would have landed in, let's say, half guard, then now you've broken away from each other and more damage can be dealt. Right? We saw it the other day with Rafael Assunção versus Davy Grant, where a point was taken, but then they didn't put them back in the same position. And so now Davy Grant's in the third round, 2 rounds down already, another point taken. So essentially 3 rounds down. In his mind, he's like, well, I have to get a KO now. I might as well just go balls to the wall. And then he knocked out Rafael Assunção, or he choked him out, right? He hurt him badly on the feet and he choked him out. Now, if I was Assunção, I would be thinking, well, if you didn't take the point, you wouldn't have broken us up, and maybe I would have just grinded him out for the rest of the fights, right? And that rest of the fight. And that was Assunção's last fight as well, retirement fight. So I'll be really pissed off if I was Rafa. So, you know, thinking about that example, and I'm sure there's some other examples like that, I would say that you definitely should put them back maybe in the same position as they was, or if not, act like the takedown basically worked, because I don't think taking a point is enough. I honestly think that they should take a point and, you know, put them back in the same position. But I guess it depends on how many times they've grabbed the cage. I think there's a lot of different things going into it, but that would be my view.
And to me, hard warning. I remember like Herb D was saying, "I'm gonna give you a hard warning," and then you took a point away. Like it's like that didn't make any fucking sense, right? But hard warnings should not even exist. Maybe for like a groin strike, you know, because those could be incidental, you know, because there's so many moving parts. But a fence grab is a fence grab. There should be no warning. You should take a point and put them in the position, because the reason why they grabbed the fence is because they were getting taken down. It's not like they weren't getting taken down. They were getting there. They were feeling danger of getting put on their back. So you take the point. You put them on, not on their back. You sit them against the cage. This is what I feel, and put the guy on top, and then start him from there and see what happens. It could be a huge factor, like you said. The Davy Grant fight was just a prime example of that. You know, I mean, if Rafa just like if they put Rafa back into that spot, he would have grinded out that fight. He would have won a decision. His retirement would have been lovely, right? But instead, he gets choked out in front of his family. Right. It's
tough, man.
It's crazy, man. It is tough, man. It's a crazy sport. The people that betted Davy Grant, they were celebrating their ass off it. And I know a lot of people did, right? Because Davy Grant's a killer, man. That dude, I love to watch him fight. But yes, it wasn't a right decision. Now, what do you do? What do you do with these guys, right? What do you do with Leon? What do you do with what's his name? Usman, right? Dana White, he's the guy that always says, "Oh, I don't make fights after the fights," but then he's all of a sudden talking about, "Oh yeah, Colby's gonna be next." I think he's just saying that, and maybe they made a deal because Colby came in and weighed in to be the backup fighter. They might have made a deal behind closed doors, saying like, "Yo, you come in as a backup fighter just in case, and if the fight happens, you will get the next shot at the title." And Colby's like, "All right, cool. I'll come in and weigh in." I'm surprised that they didn't even offer that to anybody else, you know what I mean, in the division, because Colby's like in a weird spot, right? He hasn't really beaten a contender for a few years, and he's been away from the sport. He got beat up in the street. You know what I mean? There's a lot of factors there. Lucrative, what do you think about Colby getting the next title shot?
I'll have to see the rankings. I mean, I understand why they did it, right? Like, it's funny because people are like, oh, you know, he doesn't deserve the shot. But I guess they're looking at it from strictly a sport standpoint, right? Which, yeah, okay, we can look at it from that standpoint. But you also have to put yourself in the shoes of the UFC, Dana White. At the end of the day, at the very end of the day, their main objective is to increase the bottom line, right? You can say it's all about the love of the sport and Dana White. Yeah, of course, I know he loves the sport, but the main objective, he's got contracts, he's got shareholders, you know what I mean? He's got things that he has to do every year, and that is make a certain amount of money, put on a certain amount of shows every year. So he wants to make the most money. And say what you want about him, Colby is going to bring a lot of attention to that Leon Edwards fight, right? He's going to boost the pay-per-views by whatever the arbitrary number is, 100,000, 200,000, I don't know, right? If you put someone in there like Shavkat Rakhmonov, I'm just saying him because he had a great win over Jeff Neal not too long ago. I mean, the guy doesn't even speak English. You know, he's not going to get the same amount of attention to that Edwards fight as Colby would, meaning it's not going to generate the same amount of money. It's just not, right? So on the one side, I completely understand it. Strictly from a sport basis, I also understand it. I mean, he had 2 very close fights against Kamaru Usman. You know, and it's funny because it was the same referee who stopped that first fight against Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, which was quite a soft stoppage. And that was the same referee. I think it might have been Tognoni. I can't remember. It was the same referee who didn't stop the Ashmos and Patterson fight when Ashmos was just in mount and just ground and pounded him for like 10 minutes. It was just quite crazy to see the difference. And it goes back to how we're speaking about the refereeing, you know, and how different it is each time they fight, right? But I do understand giving Colby the shot just because he has had 2 close fights with Usman. You know, a lot of people saying him and Usman are very comparative. So now Leon's dethroned Usman. Is he going to fight? You know, he could fight Colby, who's quite comparative to Usman. But I mean, who else is there in line right now at welterweight? You know, we've got Rakhmonov, but who else?
But well, when you look at it from, like you said, a business standpoint, right? You could look at the rankings, but rankings, fuck them. They don't matter, right? It doesn't. They put the people that they want in the rankings and boost them up if they want to and move them around. It's puzzle pieces to them, right? It's whatever they want to do. You got Bilal, who's likely going to fight Shavkat, right? And a lot of people are pushing for Bilal to get the next title shot. And then you got the Masvidal Burns fight coming up in a couple of weeks. In Miami, right? To me, I think that the most popular, the one that could sell tickets, is of course Masvidal, right? At the end of the day, he's more popular than Colby. He's shown that he's able to sell tickets, right? And he's done things for the UFC in the past. I think they're just putting Colby in there in that spot because nothing's guaranteed until that Masvidal Burns fight happens. If Masvidal somehow pulls off that win, I say that they're going to push Masvidal. And you even saw Leon say it in the post-fight. He's like, how does Colby make sense? Because you know he wants the Masvidal fight or he wants the Conor fight if Conor beats Chandler. There's a lot of moving parts right now that they can't make a clear decision. But just to put somebody in that place, Dana says Colby, because that's Colby did a something for them by weighing in and being the backup. That's what I see. Jspec, what do you see?
I see some good old WWE nonsense, right? That's what I see. Colby is gonna get the job because, just like you guys said, he moves the needle. He creates reactions. We were moments after that fight. He dropped a tweet. We're still in the watch party. And people are reacting to his tweets as it's happening. I mean, the guy causes reaction. All right. He's a catalyst to reaction to the fans, like it or not. Like you guys said, their job is to sell pay-per-views, and pay-per-views are normally sold in North America, primarily the US. And Leon ain't going to be doing it. I know I have a lot of arguments from fans going, Shavkat, we want to see Shavkat. Let's be honest, folks. Like mentioned, Shavkat can't sell out of McDonald's right now. Like in the States, he's not gonna do it. He's a great fighter. I think he could kill it, but when it comes to selling pay-per-views, nobody's buying a Shavkat pay-per-view yet. So with that being said, they also missed the boat. All right, the 2-piece and a soda, 3-piece and a soda, whatever, that ship has so sailed. I mean, if the UFC was going to capitalize on Masvidal versus Edwards, that fight should have been booked years ago, literally. Obviously, Masvidal has been taking some L's, so it's hard. But yeah, I agree. Like, what I would like to see is it's already booked, right? Burns and Masvidal's already booked. It's already happening. So, like it or not, Kobe's getting that fight. Everybody just get used to it. Pay attention to the cameras and what they do during a show. How many fighters sit cage side for every fight? Tons of them. How many of them in the same weight class of the main event do they pan to right before the start of the fight and immediately after the fight was concluded, shooting over to that guy and getting his reaction? That almost never happens unless they're working an angle and setting up a fight. Remember, it's not something you see often. It's something we saw with Lesnar. Obviously, that didn't quite work out. But pay attention to the camera work, people. The production, that's all set up in place before time. There's no accidental stuff getting on your TV screen. So with that being said, Kobe is the guy coming, like it or not. And it's more for the not, probably. It's more for the people going, ugh, Kobe, I guess I'll watch it just to get his face smashed in. And I think that's what's going to happen, kind of using the negative factor to get people in on this one.
Hardcores don't matter in this sport, to be honest with you, right? Lucrative, like, it doesn't matter, right, James? It's just, what do you think? It doesn't matter, right?
No, I mean, if you're talking about, like, you said Shavkat can't sell out a McDonald's. It depends what type of McDonald's. If it was like a small McDonald's, one of them drive-throughs, he probably could sell it out because you would be there, I would be there, all of us three would be there, and then the hardcores who you mentioned. But in terms of, the wider population, that's who the UFC are trying to cater for. So when people are complaining, that's why I kind of laugh a little bit, complaining about Colby getting the shot, complaining about people who maybe deserve the shot not getting the shot. I kind of, I take a step back and go, yeah, but you're a hardcore. The way you think is potentially the correct way to think, but it's not the way the UFC is going to be thinking, like it or lump it. So as a hardcore, sometimes it is tough for us because we want to see things happen that don't happen. But unfortunately, that's the way it is, and we got to live with it. We're in a capitalist society. We can't do anything about it.
Exactly. That's exactly the way people should look at it. And I'm fine with people complaining about who deserves it, because yes, the fighters deserve things, but sometimes you have to play the game. And if you don't know how to play the game, they're gonna leave you behind. So fighters, play the game. Co-main, Fiziev versus Gaethje. I had Fiziev. I picked him to win this fight, and I thought he won the first 2 rounds, to be honest with you. This is where the judging comes in, the horrific judging. Paul Sutherland gave Gaethje a 10-8 round for the third. What is going on, James? What the hell? Who is Paul Sutherland? He's becoming famous for the wrong reasons.
Honestly, man, I've said it a few times, to people that have asked me about the judging and what went on yesterday. And I've said I'm almost ashamed to be English. It was in England. I'm almost ashamed because now England were already known for like some poor judging, right? Now we're known even more. And I don't want us to be known for that, right? But whatever, I can't do anything about Paul Sutherland giving Justin Gaethje a 10-8 round free. That was probably, I don't think you can get a worse scorecard than that in terms of a single round. I mean, maybe there's been something comparable, but there's no argument for it. We could debate for like 20 minutes on why it shouldn't be, but even a child could score that correctly. Like there's no words I can say today that is going to describe why Paul Sutherland made that choice. It wasn't a 10-8. There's no argument for it. It's actually so crazy because in the first 60 seconds of that round, Fiziev hit Gaethje with the biggest shot that he landed all fight. And Gaethje actually, I thought he switched off for a second, right? I thought he got knocked out for a second. His center of gravity dropped. His knees buckled a little bit. I thought Gaethje was about to put him out. That was in the same round that Gaethje got a 10-8. I mean, it's just unbelievable. In terms of the actual fight, I scored Fiziev as the winner. I thought he got a 10-9 round 1 and 2, and then I thought Gaethje won the third round fairly clearly. And I thought it was fairly easy to score. Like, I didn't think that it would be controversial. But at that point, that was the co-main event. We had already had 13 prior fights, and a bunch of those fights were scored terribly. So I already knew that there could be some bad, judging in that fight. So although I had scored it 2-1 fairly comfortably for Fiziev, I wasn't confident going into the decision that he was going to get it, And honestly, seeing a Justin Gaethje, I didn't think anything could surprise me at that point. But yet again, I was surprised by the judging because they gave Gaethje a 10-8 round 3. But it was insane, man. I guess you can argue that Gaethje won the fight. You know, maybe 1 round 2 and 3. I thought it was close. But you can't argue that it was a 10-8 round 3. But yeah, I mean, I say Fiziev won the fight. But it was a good war, man. Justin Gaethje shocked me a little bit because I didn't think he could take the shots that he did. I know he's got a good chin, but he wasn't cut at all. He wasn't bruised at all. If you compare Gaethje's face to Fiziev's face, you would think that Gaethje maybe sparred backstage and Fiziev was the one fighting. But they was actually fighting each other, and Fiziev actually landed more cleaner strikes on him. It was crazy, man. That guy must have rubber skin. But it was a great fight overall. Again, marred by the judging, though.
Well, Gaethje, he has that BJ Penn gene, right? Where you don't really get bruised or cut at all, right? If you watch Gaethje's fights in the past, he doesn't really get much bruising. He doesn't really get cut at all. And he gets hit with some crazy power, right? And he loves it. He loves to get hit with that crazy power. And he got hit with a lot of crazy power in this fight. Fiziev, if you look at his past, he's always cut. He's always bruised. And even in his wins, right? He gets hit. He likes to get hit, you know. To me, I think Gaethje's like kind of like the second wave, or not Gaethje. Fiziev is kind of like the better version of Gaethje, but Fiziev is much younger. When he gets better, when he gets, you know, more time in that cage, you know, he'll become like a Gaethje, but just a better version of him eventually. This is how I feel. But I thought Fiziev won the fight, the first 2 rounds. If you scored like round by round, but at the end of the fight, if you look at the 3rd round, one thing that was happening during the 3rd round as well, and on top of like Fiziev's face just bleeding everywhere, was like the crowd yelling Gaethje throughout the 3rd round. And maybe Sutherland's like, oh, I don't know what I'm watching, but it seems like the crowd knows what they're watching, so Gaethje must be winning this fight. And Jspec, what do you think, man? What did you think about the fight? Did you think Gaethje or what is his name, Fiziev won?
Well, I gotta borrow some of your lines from earlier, man. Even a child could have scored this correctly. That was a good one, dude. This fight was clear as day. I made the comment during the watch party, like the only way you could think Justin won that fight is if you just walked in during the 3rd round, because the damage that Fiziev was wearing all over his face, right? Like if you didn't see the previous 2 rounds, you'd be like, oh, I guess Justin's winning this fight. I'm glad I made it in time to catch the last round. There was something Fiziev did a little bit in his, you know, in the he was his pedal was down for so long. I think he spent just a little bit too much gas and didn't really take those couple, you know, crafty fighters can take 30 seconds off in the ring while still looking like they wanted to fight. Fiziev just kept walking in the front door while he didn't have the juice to pull it off, and he was getting caught a lot in that 3rd round, but not enough to make a 10-8. Not enough. He never got staggered, wobbled, no stanky leg, no nothing. He wasn't even backing up really. Like there was no reasonable cause, as brought up earlier, to score this a 10-8 in any way, shape, or form. On the other side, man, I want to talk about Sutherland, man. Like we saw earlier in the match twice, earlier in the card, that Sutherland was just doing weird, wild stuff. Like, I mean, I don't know if he's on his phone, digging his nose. I don't know what he's doing, but it was not judging properly. I know we'll get to it, but like in the Omar Morales fight, he went 30 for Morales. Like what? Like, so anyways, back to this fight. I mean, I know the judges rotate, and I was like, man, whenever this guy keeps rotating back into whatever fight he gets to do next, it's going to be a shit show. And unfortunately, it has to be a fight that kind of matters a lot and shouldn't have gone this way. I actually called for his immediate resignation. I thought that's the only way to fix this. If England wants to be better or look better, I said this dude just needs to see the door, like immediately. That's my solution to that. And last top thing about this is the kind of stuff that makes me spend time defending against the casuals, saying, oh, it's rigged, there's juice in the game, blah, 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 conspiracies. It's hard when you have stuff like this happening. So anyways, that's the end of my campaign. Fiziev won, dude, straight up.
Sutherland gave Vittori 30-27. He gave Morales 30-27. And I thought Roman Dolidze might have won that fight. James, what did you think of that fight?
Yeah, I had Dolidze as the winner, man. It was a close fight though. I think round one is it's definitely a Dolidze round, right? You don't think you can really argue a Vittori round there. I mean, he got hurt in that round. He got hit with some big shots. And Vittori almost did nothing in that first round. In the second and third round, it was close. Vittori was landing some good leg kicks. And I saw someone make a good point on Twitter. I can't remember their name, sorry, but they said that, leg kicks do count. Obviously, we kind of downplay leg kicks sometimes, unless they're really debilitating and they're like making the guy so he can't walk, Chris Gutierrez type. We kind of downplay the leg kicks and we focus on the head kicks, but they do make a difference and they are damage and they are a legitimate strike. And he was kicking Dolidze's leg a lot and Dolidze's leg was bruised up. So, that is something you have to think about when you're scoring the fight. Even though Vittori didn't have the head strikes like Dolidze didn't have the forward pressure. He did have some good leg kicks throughout all 3 rounds. But I scored the fight to Dolidze. I actually thought you could give a 30-27 to Dolidze. I thought he could definitely have won all 3 rounds. If you want to give Vittori the 3rd round or the 2nd round, I'm not going to complain about it. But I do kind of complain about a Vittori win, honestly. I don't think Vittori won that fight. He won it unanimously, though, which, again, is just... every fight we're going to speak about, I feel like we're going to speak about the judging. But I don't think he won that fight. I was actually very surprised at that fight because I thought Vittori is just too big of a step up for Dolidze. And Dolidze, he keeps getting these fights where he's a big underdog betting underdog, public underdog, and he keeps winning. I know he lost last night. I mean, I thought he won the fight. But Dolidze is... because he was clowned, when he was coming in terms of... not by analysts and... people who break down the sport, but in terms of the gambling side of things, because everyone wants to bet against Dolidze. He's always a big underdog, so Vegas doesn't respect him, but he keeps on winning these fights, and he keeps on leveling up his game. So he's actually someone that I'd be scared about in that middleweight division because Vittori is a big middleweight, right? Dolidze looked a weight class bigger than him. Dolidze looked huge, man. He pressured Marvin Vittori, which is what Marvin Vittori is known for. Marvin Vittori is known for pace, pressure, jabbing, never stopping. He couldn't do that to Dolidze. Dolidze hit harder. He was bigger, more pressure. I mean, the guy looked like a world beater. Honestly, he did. And he still lost the fight, But yeah, I did score it for Dolidze. I wouldn't mind to see. I wouldn't. It's quite frustrating as a viewer sometimes when you see these fighters and you think they clearly won the fight and they get robbed, on the judges' scorecard. So I can only imagine how it would feel for Dolidze because I didn't even bet on Dolidze. And I'm frustrated that he didn't win the fight just because it's so annoying when a fighter clearly won and he didn't, he doesn't get awarded with the win. But I did. I know a lot of people scored it for Vittori as well, though. But I'm thinking a lot of people bet on Vittori, so they're biased. So I'd be keen to see how you guys scored it because maybe I was just looking at different things, and not counting in the leg kicks and such.
I think that Dolidze, he surprised a lot of people in that fight because he didn't try to really grapple that much. He went straight at Vittori, and what Vittori likes to do is to stand and strike, and make it kind of a technical battle. And I felt like Dolidze landed the more powerful shots throughout the whole fight. Vittori is very good at point fighting. Let's just be real about it. He's a point fighter. If you look at his history, he's not a guy that really finishes other guys. He outpoints guys. And I think a lot of people are like clouded in judgment with the Hermansson fight because they got to go back and understand that Hermansson broke his orbital in the first round of that fight. And it altered how that fight played out, Hermansson. And, what's his name? Dolidze took out Hermansson pretty easily. So I was like thinking, maybe Dolidze, but I picked Vittori because I knew Vittori was going to do what he does. He likes to just stand at distance, kick the legs, and clinch and throw the jab out there. But I was really shocked at what Dolidze did. I think that moving forward, Vittori is a guy that you probably want to bet against, and Dolidze is a guy you want to bet for in any matchup coming up. And I think Dolidze is going to get a pretty good matchup next. He's, I was really impressed by him, and but not impressed by the judges, man. It was horrific. And the Morales fight, that was just horrific as well. 30-27 for him. I don't understand what the hell that they were watching. Me on Twitter, like I like to fuck around a lot and I'll just like post shit. just to like see people react to just dumb shit. You know
You've
what I
got
mean?
me before. You've got me before. Last week, I don't know what it was, but you got me once.
Yeah, and I just like to do it, man, because people just take it just too damn seriously. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm, some like big figure in this sport or something like that. You know what I mean? To where I need to be like watchful of what I write on there. But yeah, just truthfully, like right here in these platforms, I'm speaking like how I really feel, and I think Dolidze, clearly he won the fight against Vittori. But was it a robbery? I can't say that, man. I can't say that. It's not like that. It's not like that. What about Casey O'Neill, Jspec? What do you think of Casey O'Neill? She suffers her first defeat as a professional. What do you think?
Man, what can I say? Like, I was all into this fight saying, oh man, I'm gonna roll with the undefeated fighter, not just because she's undefeated, because she's undefeated in Octagon. I'm gonna roll with her until the wheels fall off, until she drops it. She dropped it. And she dropped it in a way that was disappointing because she did kind of the thing you predicted, JHK. You were like, hey man, if she comes in here just falling in love with her striking like she tried to do against Roxanne, she's gonna lose the fight. Sure shit. That's what she did. And it was good. The back and forth was good. I'm not saying her hands is crap. It has gotten better. Like, good job, Casey. But like, you just completely abandoned grappling. Like, what was that? Completely abandoned it. I mean, you got taken down by Maia, and you got your back taken by Maia. Like, you just left your ace card in your pocket. I mean, ever heard of mixing it up? That was the part that broke my heart, was just like this blatant, I'm doing this and I don't care what the results are kind of action that was going on. Just no adjustment. I guess not even the attempt. Did she even have an attempted takedown? I gotta look at the stats. I don't remember it. I don't remember her even trying. So that part was kind of frustrating to see, especially from like the back half of round 2, especially into 3, where like, I get it in round 1 when it was close, like the striking was a little bit closer, but that it progressively went against you and there was just no adjustment. So she's still young in the cage, like you said, young in octagon miles. I have faith that she'll adjust, and she's probably already thought of all the things I just said. So hope for better things, but big thumbs up to Maia for basically kind of saying, dude, there's levels to this.
Yeah. Also, like between rounds, I don't understand what her coaches was telling her as well. Like, you're a grappler. Like, if you're losing the striking exchanges, you need to adjust and go in there and try to grapple, try to wrestle. And she has good wrestling. She has good grappling. Maia does too, but I don't know. I think maybe O'Neill might be stronger. James, what did you think of that fight?
Yeah, so that was one of the good moments of the night for me in terms of my betting, because I bet on Jennifer Maia. She was a decent sized underdog in that fight. And the fight went pretty closely to how I envisioned it. I knew that Maia would be a step ahead on the boxing, so I wasn't surprised there. But like you said, Jspec, man, I was surprised that she didn't wrestle more. I did think Casey would try and wrestle more. I didn't think it would be successful. That's why I bet on Maia, right? But I mean, maybe it would have been. I don't know. I'm just predicting things to happen. But she didn't try. I think she had one takedown attempt. But yeah, so she had one takedown attempt, I think, right?
Yeah, jumping in on the AllStar app, you can see it. One attempt for O'Neill, 4 attempts for Maia, and in that sequence, she didn't get her down, but Maia also got her back once for 1:23 of control time. Not the stats you would think would be on the Maia side. Keep going, man.
Yeah, exactly. So I was surprised there. I mean, it could be a combination of things. Could be a combination of she just never felt set to shoot a takedown, because Maia's always moving, Maia's always bouncing. She does not stop, like she can go, it looks like she can go for 15 rounds there. But yeah, I think maybe next fight we'll see her grapple a little bit more. That is what she's good at. But she doesn't have good wrestling. That's the issue. A lot of these fighters, Casey O'Neill's best attribute is her pace and pressure. That's what she does really, really well. She's not a great grappler. She's not this awesome BJJ ace, like Mackenzie Dern. She's not a great wrestler like Tatiana Suarez. But what she does is she goes forward consistently. She never stops. I mean, even in that fight, she landed like 150 strikes or something like that on Maia. even in a fight where she was basically getting beat up for 3 rounds, but she still landed 150 strikes. So what that means is a cardio, a pace and pressure. You know, she's an attritional fighter like Merab Dvalishvili, you know, with a little bit less skillful. She's just going to consistently do it. And in that fight, she did all of that, but she didn't mix in the wrestling. She didn't mix in the grappling. So I think in the next fight, she's got time to grow, right? I did expect her to lose this fight. I bet on her to lose, but she's 9-1 now. I think taking an L is probably the best thing for her career at this point, because at some point she was going to take an L because she's obviously not learning the things she needs to learn in terms of maybe getting a little bit better at the wrestling. Maybe use your pace and pressure in a more sophisticated way, because when you hit the upper echelons, that pace and pressure, you're going to come against someone who's got much better footwork. You're going to come against someone who's already seen that style a million times. You're going to come against someone like Jennifer Maia, who's able to bounce in and out of range, can skirt along the outside of the octagon. When you're fighting the Shayna Dobsons of the world, you know, no disrespect to her, she's not on the level of Jennifer Maia, you know, outside the upper echelon of the sport, this pace and pressure, that's going to win you fights all the way up until the top 5. But the top 5 fighters, like Jennifer Maia is, she knows, she's top 10, top 5 fighter, especially in a later resurgence, you know, beating Morose and Casey O'Neill. It's not going to work. You know, you're going to need a little bit more to your game than pure pace and pressure. So I think Casey O'Neill's learned that here. She's obviously got the heart. She's obviously got the raw talent, the raw skills. And I think she's going to bounce back from that. And I could see her beating someone like Jennifer Maia in 3 or 4 years, you know, but at this juncture, it was just too early in her career. But I'm excited to see how both fighters, or I'm excited to see how O'Neill bounces back. And I'm actually excited to see where Jennifer Maia goes from here, because she's never been dominated in a fight, you know. Even against Manon Farrow, she held her own there. I know she got beat 30-27, but she held her own. And that Valentina Shevchenko fight, she was the first person, you know, we have to remember, she was the first person that laid the blueprint on how to beat Val. She was the first person who won a round the first, except for Amanda Nunes, of course, you know, at flyweight, first person who won the round. She took her down in that second round and stayed on top for the whole fight. And that's exactly how Tyler Santos beat, you know, Valentina. And that's what Grasso done. You know, she took her back in a transition. So I'm actually really excited to see where Jennifer Maia goes from here. I think she's got the best boxing in the entire division. And it's good to see her finally get her props, you know, winning 2 on the bounce against good fighters, against fighters that were favorites over her. So I'm excited to see how both girls perform. And it was actually a very exciting fight, you know, as all O'Neill fights are.
Yeah, Maia, she could be making her second run to the top again. You know what I mean? Especially with the new champion, and maybe Valentina might not be a champion again. Who knows? You know what I mean? Because we got some killers. We got some youngsters. And Casey O'Neill's a youngster. She's probably one of the youngest, you know, in that top 15. Yeah, I'm interested to see how she bounced back and what she alters, and reality checks are needed in this sport, right? You could be an undefeated fighter and you could be cocky, and sometimes that doesn't work out for you. And she got it in this fight. Maia, who do you think she fights though? Like, she's fought a lot of the top competition. I'll be interested though. Nothing really too much more to say about that fight. In the prelims, we had a lot of UK talent on the prelims. We had Hadley, we had Makaev, we had Murphy, we had CLD, Duncan, Jack Shore. When you look at that crop, right, these are kind of like the younger guys coming up. Who do you see as like the main prospect? Like, who do you see as the guy that right now they could do damage in a top 15 level? Right now, what do you think, James?
Out of the fighters who fought yesterday specifically,
yeah.
I like Hadley. I think Hadley's a good fighter. I know he had that setback against Nascimento, but Nascimento is huge for the weight class. That guy looks like 2 weight classes above, not 1. And it was a good fight. You know, it wasn't like a complete domination or anything. Hadley's a young guy. I think he's got good talent. Mohamed Mokaev is the one that's being pushed a little bit more, you know, the one who's got more Twitter followers, you know, that type of stuff. The one who maybe could sell more at this juncture. But it's hard for me because he's always like a -1,000 favorite with the betting line, meaning that the bookies are basically saying this guy's a certainty to win. And then he has fights where they look kind of close. I know he was never in danger against Phil Hurt, apart from the knee bar, which we should talk about. Actually, there's a lot to talk about in the Mokaev fight, right? So maybe we can, switch gears and speak about Mokaev because, straight off the bat, I think Hadley's probably at this point maybe the more refined talent, the better talent. I think he blends the skill set together more well. But Mokaev maybe has the more raw talent in terms of his wrestling, in my opinion, is at such a good level that he can kind of base everything around it. But I still think he has a lot of learning to go. But in that fight against Phil Ho, it was a close fight at times. Phil Ho did well in the grappling. And that knee bar, that fully locked in knee bar, that was insane to watch. I mean, I thought that was 100% going to be a tap. I thought that was definitely, Mokaev's lost the fight. It is what it is because he had that knee bar. I mean, someone did a tweet on it and they put like the line of his knee and it's literally bent. I mean, it wasn't a straight line, Knees don't bend, We've all got knees. We've all got two of them and we know that they do not bend, right? I mean, even if you do jiu-jitsu, you know that they don't bend or they at least shouldn't bend. So for Mokaev not to tap to that, I mean, it was amazing to see. He's obviously got the heart, which is something that I feel like you're either born with it or you're not. There's fighters who are amazing fighters. They just don't have the heart to be, the top level. So we know that Mokaev, he has the skills, whatever. He needs to refine those, but he's definitely got the heart and he's definitely got the mindset and the will to win, right? Because if you didn't, you would be tapping out from that knee bar a long time before he didn't, right? So that's definitely something good to see. I think both of those guys are young enough where they can improve their skill sets and go far in the division. I'm very excited to see where Hadley and Mokaev both go. I think the UFC need to slow down in terms of don't give these fighters, I know everyone's complaining that Mokaev needs to step up and he's getting fighters who are not good and stuff like that. But these people are like gamblers, right? And they just look at everything through the betting odds. And they're like, oh, Mokaev's a minus 1,000 favorite again. So he's fighting a bad fighter. But if you actually look at it for, building a prospect, which is something that boxing's really good at. UFC has been criticized from time to time. They don't build their prospects that well. They usually just throw them in there, but sometimes they do. And we're seeing it a little bit more with Ian Gary, Mohamed Mokaev. I feel like they need to just slow roll him because I think he could be something special. But at the moment, if that was against someone else, a bit of better jiu-jitsu, maybe he would have tapped him from, maybe not the knee bar because he didn't look like he was tapping from that at all, but maybe a different submission or, Malcolm Gordon took his back in the last fight. So these type of things, I think Mokaev definitely, and I'd like to hear your opinion on the knee bar and what type of heart it has to not tap out to that. And I don't know if you saw the tap, the phantom tap that was going around on Twitter. There was a clip that went out where Mokaev tapped in the first round to something, but it just looked like he was tapping on his arm or tapping on his rib just to kind of say like, oh, come on, buddy, or something like that, because there was no submission locked in.
No, so there was nothing.
I was very interested to see that because he clearly tapped multiple times. I mean, everyone saw it, right? Like that. But there was no submission locked in or anything. So it was very interesting for me to see that. Sometimes they tap to kind of like, Brazilian tap so the other opponent changes position or whatnot. But I don't know. But I don't know if you have any opinion on that specifically. But yeah, to answer your question, long-winded way, Hadley and Mokaev most certainly are the future stars for England at this moment.
I love that they have beef too. I love it. I love that they're building it like right now, and they're going to be at the top real soon, and they're going to have to fight each other eventually. I love it. I love that they have that little beef, little stew that they have. The Phantom tap. I watched the video. When you watch it like one time, and you're like, oh shit, he did tap. Like he was submitted. But then if you watch it a few times, you're like, there was no submission. There was nothing. He was in a takedown. Like he was just he had the dude on his back. That's it. So I don't know. Sometimes people can manipulate video, and if you play it enough times, it looks like what it's not. Mokaev, man, he's gonna be out for a while now. His shoulder was probably jacked up in the Malcolm Gordon fight, and that's why he kind of got in trouble. I don't like that he's fighting through injuries. He didn't get the surgery on his shoulder. He got the rehab, came back kind of quick because he wanted to fight in the UK. And then I feel like that had he had some issues with his shoulder probably in this fight as well. And then now he has his shoulder, he has his knee. How long he's going to be out for? That's going to just give time for Hadley to become a bigger star. This is what I see happening. And then Mokaev is going to come back and have to build himself up. But I like your idea. I wish they would build fighters more, let them fight out, prospects and guys that they could kind of fill out the octagon and build more hours in there. Jack Shore is another one. He's at featherweight now. I think they should just give him fighters that he can build himself upon. Not just throw him in there, because they're trying to hype him too as well. I mean, of course, Jack has a following and all that, but is he a guy that can jump in right now at featherweight? There's a lot of dudes that would crush him, dude. Like crush him in that top 15. I don't think that they should jump him in there. And but there's like Laurent Murphy, he's a little bit up there in age. He's got to jump in there with some higher level talent. And his fight, it was close. Santos, a lot of people think he won that fight, and I could not argue against that. I cannot argue against that. Murphy, he came back from almost dying, and this is his second time coming back from almost dying, right? The first time is he got shot in the neck and the face. So it's just like, that guy is just, like, let's just push him, because I think he's like 30, maybe early 30s probably. But to me, I agree with you. I think Hadley and Makaev is the future of the flyweight division, and both those guys will probably end up holding that belt, both of them. Jspec, what do you think? Who do you think? Who do you like in that prospect pool?
Well, definitely Mokaev. I mean, everybody's behind him already. They like him. They like what they see from him. And if you weren't on board with him, his exhibition of just pure heart that he showed is things of magic, right? You're gifted by the fight gods punching power. You're gifted by the gods the iron chin, and then you got the lion heart. And he's got at least that last one, like in Bounty. It was impressive. Almost impressive is like short selling it. To have his knee completely torqued, you can see how instantly he was hurt, and then still just like get the next position and choke the dude out. I mean, just how much greatness do we want to see? I also think that plays into like his fighting style. Like, I'm just saying, we've all been young once, and I hope everybody's had success once. And sometimes when both of those two things are happening at once, why change it? Like, I know from the outsiders want to talk about like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that. But for right now, I can place you on the rug and I can own you. And with his knee getting bent out like that, not quitting and keeping his style, I don't really think he has to. Like, until it shows that it doesn't work, it is working. On the other side, like you said, I hope him the very best in all recovery. Whatever he needs to do, take some time off, dude. You're fully registered in the hearts and minds of all the fighters, fight fans. Excuse me, what I wanted to say. We're not leaving anytime soon. We know you're legit coming up, so your place is held. Go get well. Go get solid. We do want to see great fights, like you had said, matched up with Hadley. UFC definitely has to start slow cooking some dudes. They've been churning and burning dudes a lot in the past 2 years, 3 years. We've seen it. So there needs to be that progression. They need to give more people the Sugar Sean O'Malley treatment of, hey, and I don't mean like crushing cans. I hate that word, but let it happen. And then when he does look good, throw him against like what happened for Sean. Like, hey, straight to the front of the line. You really about this? Come test and see what's up. And oh, he can hang. So with that being said, yeah, Mokaev is my number one, but I also want to give a little bit of shine to Jack Shore, because I like Jack Shore. I've been a big Jack Shore fan for a minute. I think he's good. Even though he moved up in weight, I was like, I want to see how this works out. Is it, we don't really know for sure if that's like 100% Jack Shore kicking ass, or was it Makwan doing Makwan things, Amir Kahani just looking like what we all expected, right? Just animal first round, and then who is this guy? Is this his evil twin in the second round? It was crazy. So with that being said, those are my two guys. So highest Mokaev, second would be Mr. Shore.
James, Makwan and Murakami, man, isn't it crazy? Like, what you need to work on, but you just never fix it, and you stay in the UFC for year after year after year. Isn't it just wild? Like, fighters can continue like that.
It's genetics, man. It must be, because look, maybe every once in a while you get a fighter who really doesn't train his cardio and just doesn't do well. But for the most part, these guys are training their cardio every day. You know what I mean? They're in the gym. They should have better cardio than they do. When we're speaking about many, many fighters in the UFC, that are round one or bust. That's what we call them in the gambling scene. You know, we say they're round one or bust. That means if they don't get the finish in round one, they're bust. They're going to lose the fight, right? And Mac 1 falls into that bracket. And a lot of other fighters do too. And it must just be a genetic thing, you know. I've never seen research or papers on it. I don't think there has been studies specifically done, you know. But these guys will work on it for sure. But then when it comes, you know, fight time, they do the same thing every single fight. You know, it's honestly crazy to see, but it must be a genetic thing because I can't say every single one of them is just like, you know, not doing their cardio. You know what I mean? Or they're just eating bad or partying or something like that. But yeah, it's crazy to see.
It's crazy. It is. And Jack Shore, in a way, I feel like he got a setup fight in that one. Just like, hey, we're gonna open the door for you at featherweight. Here's a good matchup, and get past the first round, and you can get a finish and be able to show out a little bit. Now before we head out, I wanted to tap on some topics that are running around in MMA right now, and the first one is USADA and the whole USADA versus Conor McGregor situation. And it's, to me, it's like I don't even respect USADA anymore. Like, I have no respect for USADA. I feel like USADA is just like an employee for the UFC, basically, right? They just do what the UFC wants. Even Dana White comes out and all of a sudden he's just like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. Like, that's not me. That's USADA and Conor McGregor. But if it was another situation, then he would have his opinions, right? Are fighters fighting? Are they playing on an even ground, you think, right now in the UFC, James?
What do you mean by that?
Like, you know, the treatment with USADA, you know, certain guys get tested 50 times. Like we saw Yuri getting tested 50 times last year. And then certain other guys are in the top 15 or even champions, they're getting tested once or twice a year.
It's pretty clear that I don't know what it is, but there's something going on that doesn't meet the eye. You know, I remember back in what was it, 2019 maybe, when that's just a guess, when John Jones come back and fought Daniel Cormier, that the whole picogram saga, right? So he pops for steroids, but then apparently, oh, it's not that bad. It's only picogram. It's not popping for steroids. And another thing with USADA, they consistently change their threshold for what they consider a steroid, right? So like 1 year, it's, okay, you need this many grams of nandrolone or whatever it is. But then the next year, it's like, oh, it's okay, you can have that now, you know, like, but you can't have 100 grams. And they say it's because the science is changing, which is probably true. But then that also means that how can we really trust it? You know, because if you're changing it every year, then really what are you really saying? And then we know for a fact certain fighters are juicing because they get popped for it. But then some fighters miraculously, you know, look 10 times better than they've ever looked physically in their cardio. You know, like they can go 5 rounds where they only went 1 round before. And it's kind of obvious that they're juicing. And then loads of other fighters have come out and consistently and say, people juice all the time. Michael Bisping has been, you know, the captain of the anti-steroid ship. You know, he's been saying, he works for the UFC. And he's been saying for the last 10 years, everybody's juicing. I was one of the only ones who's not doing it, and I still became champion. So that just shows you, you know, you need to do. So like everybody knows that people are juicing. And there's some weird stuff where it seems like John Jones was able to come back from this picogram saga, and Dana White's holding a press conference with Jeff Nowitzki saying that actually John Jones is not guilty. It's nothing. He got proven wrong. But then he was popped 6 times or whatever it was. It is crazy. And now with this Conor thing, I haven't stayed up to date with it. So I don't know the ins and outs, you know. I know that Conor said something like, F USADA, you don't mean anything. And like, usually you would think that, well, then he shouldn't be able to fight, right? If he's saying certain things like that, because he's essentially saying he's not going to do testing, or I don't know. I haven't kept up with it fully, but it does seem like something's fishy going on, you know. But I don't know what that is.
There was also the Darren Till thing where he's released from the UFC because Darren Till wants to go out and not be tested so he could get his injuries taken care of, and some of the treatment for the injuries is on the banned list, or most likely on the banned list, or maybe on the banned list. He doesn't know for sure. And then there's the TJ Dillashaw, he retires, but who knows, you know what I mean? Maybe he's retiring to get out of the testing pool, you know, and he's a guy that they probably have their eyes on, you know what I mean? He's like the poster boy, right? He's the one, the major name, the first one to come out and just get completely just completely murdered by USADA, you know what I mean? Like just 3-year ban and all of that stuff. Yeah, it's like fighters are figuring out loopholes. You know, you got the IV situation as well. You know, they thought IVs were banned by USADA, and then somehow like secretly, like you can take 100 milligrams every 12 hours when they were banned, and a lot of fighters thought you weren't allowed to use IVs at all. And then the ones that knew were using the IVs. But then if you use an IV, you have to report it to USADA or report it to the commission. But there's no log of anybody using IVs or reporting that they use IVs. But clearly someone's using IVs. You know, I've been hearing stories of fighters using IVs the whole time. And it's like, are they even doing their job? Or, you know, there's the whole conspiracy theory with they just brought them in so they could look legitimate and sell the UFC for, what was it, $3.3 billion and right away in the sunset. And that's what they did. If it was that for that reason, they did a great job, And now it's like, do they even need them around? You know what I mean? Like, do they even need it? You know, this seems like, you know, the commissions really don't care at all. You know what I mean? Of course, the commissions test them on, you know, fight week, but everybody, you know, it's like the smell test. Everybody can go into fight week clean, pretty much, right? You got to be I forgot what coach said. You got to be dumb to get busted during fight week, right? It's out of competition testing, and you know, fighters will say like, you know, I'll fight a guy on steroids. It's like, really? Like, there's a reason why you're in the UFC, because it's supposed to be the cleanest promotion, right? Like, you shouldn't say that you would fight a guy on steroids. It doesn't make any sense. To me, it's very, very odd, man, like what they're doing. And you know, people talk about it's conspiracy theories. It's not, man, because like Conor, clearly he's doing something. You know what I mean? Like, you see him walking around, you know what I mean? Like, it looks like it's not like he's just going and weight training with bodybuilders, and there would be no reason to do that, right? You're a fighter. Why would you bodybuild? But Jspec, any final thoughts on this topic?
Oh, I got a lot. First off, steroids in this sport sucks. It takes away all the integrity of the sport. I've been watching it literally since the beginning. I'm a fan for this since I'm 8 years old until the day I die. I hate it. I hate it a lot. One of the first guys, Uncle BJ Penn, was against it, and there's many other guys against it, including Bisbing and everybody else, right? If you don't have rules, and I'll jump into something else, if you don't have rules that apply to everyone, it's not rules, all right? It's just arbitrary bullshit that's used to hold other people down and let other people get away with shit. We got way too much of that in all of our societies across the world, so we don't need any of that. Next, Uncle Chael said, you know, a juicer knows a juicer. He was admitted to being juiced up. He can tell which guys are juiced up. I mean, if it's that simple, I mean, come on. I mean, we all know that there's people doing it. It shouldn't be this obvious. It shouldn't be that hard. Next, and maybe not lastly, but something I want to bring up is I don't want any more parts of. I love boxing. Let me just say that. I don't want any of the shitty parts of boxing leaking over to MMA. And one of those things is a couple years ago, there was a world title fight that the champion popped for a diuretic in the rule book for that, and they moved the entire venue onto a Native American land reservation, which is under a different guideline that doesn't have the verbiage for that diuretic. So he wasn't stripped of the title and the fight could continue. I do not want this to start being the thing in the UFC or MMA anywhere in general. It sucks. And what is so hard if we're gonna have? I also want to answer the question: is USADA necessary? No, they're clearly trash, dude. Like, get them out. There's got to be some other organization that has more clearer rules, more set standards. There's got to be somebody out there. There needs to be some kind of testing. I'm not for the whole, hey, just let them juice, let them juice. No, let's not do that. All right, I do care about how the fighters live after the fight game's over. So let's throw that out the window. But we do need to have a fair system. Like what? Hey, you're gonna get tested twice a month. It's gonna be random as shit, and that's just how it goes. Like, why is that so hard? I'm pretty sure steroids last in your system longer than 2 weeks. So if everybody gets tested twice in a month at random in the calendar month, so everybody gets done, it's not that hard, dude. Like, I'm a regular guy. I just figured it out. Ta-da! So USADA's a joke. They're puppets behind the organization. Like I said, this is a direct copycat of poison from other fighting leagues, like I said, in boxing and whatnot. So the organization, the UFC, the promotion, I should say, is hiding behind an organization, and this is shell games and shadow movement and bullshit. Get it out of the sport, man.
I just can't wait until Dana White puts out that documentary he says he's putting out once again about like the media and everything and how shitty they are. It's gonna be funny, man. I'm interested to see who pops up on there about the whole situation. Anderson Silva, man, he finally enters the UFC Hall of Fame. He was popped as well, even though I hate to say that, but he was popped as well for, I believe, dick pills or something, right? 7-Eleven dick pills. You know, he was trying to get his freak on. I don't know for sure. You know what I mean? Who knows from that era? But going back to the venue change, didn't they do that for John Jones, right? It was supposed to be in Vegas, and you're right. All right. Anyways, Anderson Silva, UFC Hall of Fame, finally. What do you think? James, how far does your MMA go back? Like you watching MMA like live and knowing the sport?
So I'm 28, right? So I first started getting involved in combat sports through boxing. You know, in the UK, I grew up in London, right? So in the UK, boxing is huge. You know, MMA is not that big. Now it's, you know, super popular now. But when I was growing up, it wasn't that popular, right? It's boxing. So my first love of combat sports was boxing. We used to do boxing as kids in our school. You know, when we used to go for like PE, physical education, we used to play boxing. But I didn't start getting into MMA till after boxing. I started learning about, well, I initially watched MMA with my dad. We watched a promotion called Cage Rage, which I think Anderson Silva actually fought in that promotion, which is quite crazy. If you remember his knockout over Tony Strickland, which was the upwards elbow with the yellow cage, I'm pretty sure that was in Cage Rage. Or it might have been in UCMMA or something, but I'm pretty sure that was in Cage Rage, right? Old school promotion. I used to watch that with my dad, but I was super young. I just wanted to hang with my dad, and he would just have it on the TV. I don't think he was even too interested. So that was like my first, you know, it was like two bald men, like, because you're talking about 20 years ago, you know, these fighters, they wasn't really high level. They were just like bald guys, tattoos, that just wanted to fight each other. You know, it wasn't really high level type of promotion. But it was on TV and I used to watch it. But I didn't actually really started getting into the MMA until quite late, around 2015, 2014. So I remember it was the era where Stipe Miocic first made his run. He knocked out Andrei Arlovsky. You know, I think that was in like 2016, 2015, when McGregor fought Chad Mendes. I remember that was like the first big fight. My friend told me, hey, there's this Irish guy called Conor McGregor. Like, you'll probably like him because he's quite like, he's similar to us. He's rowdy, he's young, he's from Ireland, we're from England. He makes jokes that we do, you know, like that type of English banter. So I went and watched him, and that's when I really fell in love with the sport. So it wasn't around the time, that was way past Anderson Silva's prime and stuff. Anderson was still fighting, of course. You know, I remember staying up to watch him versus Michael Bisping. I love that fight, of course, great fight. But obviously, I know a lot about Anderson Silva, right? I know the history behind him. I've gone back and watched a lot of his fights. You know, he's had a fight. He used to fight in England, so I know him quite well in terms of, for that reason, right? I know a lot of things about him fighting behind the scenes. I remember when he fought Lee Murray. You know, we used to look up to Lee Murray when we was a bit younger, probably for the wrong reasons, but he fought Lee Murray. That was a great fight, 3-round fight. So I love Anderson Silva. Yeah, he probably was juicing. Everybody was juicing. Everyone's juicing in virtually every sport. It's a fact of the world. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. I don't think it should happen because there's certain people out there that don't. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. He's an amazing fighter, one of the best fighters of all time. His striking style is like etched into history. so many fighters these days come up saying, you know, Anderson Silva got me into MMA. I mean, if you just think about how many men and women even across the world literally step foot into an MMA gym because of Anderson Silva, it must be hundreds of thousands, you know? I mean, in Brazil alone, it's going to be tens of thousands. Imagine all across the world. So, you know, his legacy on the sport goes well, or legacy on the world goes well beyond MMA, because he's made men, women make positive decisions, like going into an MMA gym, you know, working on their health. You know, these things, a lot of times we just look at the fight and we look at brutal knockouts and elbows and people getting out, and we actually forget that, you know, stepping into an MMA gym, becoming more self-conscious about your health and sport in general is actually a massive positive for the world, you know. So without going all emotional and deep into it, Anderson Silva's a legend. He's impacted the entire world, and I'm very happy that, you know, his inevitable induction into the Hall of Fame happened yesterday.
You make a great point about the impact, because I feel like he was probably one of the first UFC fighters to have that kind of impact, not in popularity, but just in like fighters or people just entering martial arts. And Conor as well, you know, of course, Conor's just exploded, right? He just, like, the impact is, you can't compare it to like what Anderson Silva, Conor's much bigger, you know, but Anderson Silva, he had the kind of like that same impact. You know, Ronda Rousey was like right between them. But yeah, Anderson Silva, if you watch him, he's probably one of the most exciting fighters to watch. And he was the champion the whole time, which is unheard of, right? We'll probably never see that, like, see the type of performances a champion will come out, because now it's just so high level, right? It's just everybody's good at everything. Jspec, what do you think of them putting him in the pioneer wing, though? Like, what? Pioneer? Is he a pioneer? Like,
no,
like
he was
Royce Gracie a pioneer?
Yeah, dude. First off, wrong category. Right move. Like, good job on the Hall of Fame thing. I think he was like if you do have an automatic walk-in, shoe-in person, it's gotta be Anderson Silva. It's not debatable whether he should be there or not. Uh can we also say just the UFC Hall of Fame is like a shit show and poorly organized and just like kind of just stupidly
Clearly.
ran? Yeah, thank you.
Clearly.
But besides that, he well deserved. The man totally deserves it. Pioneer era, wrong. I don't know what the different names of them are called, but I would call it the golden era. To me, he's like the stamp of the beginning of the golden era, past the pioneer era. Not the same as Royce, but equally important in my opinion. I remember when, you know, he was coming up and shocking the world and then took over. Casual fans were thinking Anderson was his last name. They're like, "Oh, that Anderson guy is fighting." I've heard that so much it hurt my soul. But then everybody's came to learn his, you know, what his real proper name is actually. So, with all that being said, man, Anderson Silva deserved and well done to be in the UFC Hall of Fame. I'm surprised it took this long. I thought the moment he dropped the gloves, they should have just. Did they even have a jacket? They should just put the Hall of Fame jacket on him. If I don't even know that's a thing for them. But the point is, I'm happy for him. He did inspire, currently and still inspiring people in the positive way to do things. And let's be honest, like, he even made stupid Steven Seagal like somewhat legitimate, right? Like, you got to be magical to pull that shit off. And the Spider Silver was magical. Good for him.
Yeah, you know, there's always the good and the bad, right? And one of the bad things is that Jake Paul has a win over a UFC Hall of Famer. That's a terrible thing. But anyways, let's shut this shit down. James, tell everybody where they can find you, what you could do for them, because I know there's people watching that could benefit from your knowledge.
Yeah, thanks, man. First of all, thanks for having me on, Jspec, JHK. I've appreciated it and I've enjoyed it. You know, I love speaking about MMA anytime with anybody. You know, the random guy on the street that I meet in the pub or something, I'll probably speak to them about MMA. So especially someone like yourselves who knows a lot about the sport, who's been in the sport longer than me, I appreciate it. Always down to do it again. Anyone can find me on Lucrative MMA socials. I've got Instagram, Lucrative MMA, Twitter, Lucrative MMA. I'm a professional gambler, so I was brought up around the sports betting industries of the UK. And now I only bet on MMA because that's a market that is very easily won, I should say. It's very hard to win MMA, right? It's very hard to win gambling in general. But MMA is probably the weakest market at the moment. It's obviously getting better and better each year, but so are we. So, you know, I'm a professional gambler. If you want to find me at lucrativemmabetting.com if you want to learn more about me and all of that sort of stuff. But that's it, man. I help people make money from betting on MMA. And I'm excited to do that maybe on your show in the future, because I think we're going to do a pick show at some point. I don't know if you want to let that off live now. I've done it. If not, apologies. But yeah, I'm excited to do this again in the future, man, for sure.
Of course, man. Of course, man. We got to plug it, man. Next month, April 7th. April 7th for us, April 6th for the people over there in the US. We're going to do the pick show for UFC 287, a big one. And we're going to have a lot of good information because we have a lot of people we know behind the scenes. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff going on. And yeah, it's going to be a fun show. Hopefully you guys will be here and make picks. The community is growing, man. Last week, like hundreds hopped on the app and made picks. I'm enjoying it, and I enjoy the banner that you guys have in the chat. And Jspec, go follow him on Twitter so you guys can get involved in the polls and the predictions, and he'll put you on the show on Thursdays. Thank you so much for joining us. Go in the descriptions, download the AllStar app, and join us. See you guys next week, or actually see you guys on Thursday night for next week's event. We'll have Mike's MMA picks on the show. Peace out and love.